what you want? And are you getting what
All right,
you
welcome back,
need?
No Means Nerds, to a special bonus episode of the No Means No Thing, No Means Nothing, No Means No Thing podcast. We have a very special guest today. We have invited Greg from the Propagandhi Podcast onto our show. He is a big fan of No Means No, at least he claims to be such. We'll figure that out tonight, I guess.
We're going to test him.
We've been communicating with Greg since the beginning of the podcast, and he is, as a fellow podcaster, someone I've been really, really interested in talking with, and I cannot wait to dive into that more with him and talk and geek out about No Means No in a sort of extended listener interview. So we're really excited to do this. I guess we should introduce ourselves. This is, as you probably already know, Jordan.
I'm Matthew.
Michelle here.
And Greg, why don't you go ahead and say hi for us?
Hey, everybody. It's nice to be here.
Yay!
Hey, Greggy.
And Greg, since I think you've probably listened to a few of our episodes, you know that we like to play a game called What Are You Drinking? And so I'm going to let you go first, Greg. What are you drinking today?
So it is a school night, and my very young child has to wake up extremely early tomorrow, and we're already pushing our luck here with our time here tonight. So I am currently drinking a nice, hydrating orange pineapple sparkling water from the Western New York grocery institution known as Wegmans, which
That's
I know
right.
that, yeah, Michelle, I mean, you've already got my
I
back
missed
on
my
this.
Wegmans. I
So,
still have my
Excellent.
Wegmans Shoppers Club card.
What kind of vodka you put in there then?
It's none tonight, but I did try those. If it was not a school night, I may have tried one of those high noon vodka seltzer beverages for the evening. So I've had a couple of those recently, and they're delicious.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Well, I'm boring. I got tea. So that's me. You can skip right over. Unfortunately, it's also school night for me and lots of drama in the house today. So I'm not having anything to drink. Michelle, what about you?
Oh, I'm going to not have tea or fizzy pop. I'm going to have...
There we go.
Ooh, but that was a fizzy and a pop. So
I
beg to differ.
Widget go off? God damn it. Anyways.
Was that a Guinness? You got a Guinness there?
Weird.
Oh, yeah, I got a Guinness.
Awesome.
Breakfast of Champions.
Yeah, the second
I
you
got
said
a-
widget, I was like, oh my gosh, a widget.
That's
Oh,
the
yeah.
baseline. That's the baseline.
That's the baseline.
I gotta get a harp, a little harp sound on the soundboard here. So every time you pop one open, we can do the Guinness
Oh,
harp.
God, just yesterday a friend sent me a melodica. I should go up and go, blah, blah, blah.
Oh, hell
Go
yeah.
upstairs and get it.
God, well, not right now, but for next episode,
for
I
next
demand it.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, Matthew, do you got one choice for us today? Or are we doing some sort of pick?
Well, you know what's interesting is there's three of you now. So instead of you guys having to fight over which one or gang up on me, you guys have to agree. Or like two to one.
Yeah,
So-
that's right.
So I had this last time. I had the Tough Session Ale from Tofino Brewing Company.
That's not the one with the surfboard on it, is it?
That's the one with the surfboard on it.
Yeah, it's
Holy
right out.
shit, how did you remember that? What are you,
Yeah.
a freak?
Yeah.
Whoa.
And I've got the Four Winds. I've had this one before. Nectarous Dry Hopped Sour.
Ooh, I love that looking. Look at that.
Sour?
Mm.
Yeah.
Sour
Okay,
and
so
beer?
I'm really torn here because I have surfed in Tofino and Ucluelet. I've been to both of those towns, and I slept in that campground halfway in between both of them. And so I'm very tempted to tell you to drink the Tofino beer, but I'm also a very large fan of sours, so I'm going to go with the sour.
Yeah, guest rules, I think, here. I don't think we get to vote. I
Okay.
think when we
Yeah,
invite a
just
guest on, they get to
have
decide.
that
So
shit. So we'll
it has
stay
been
out of it.
spoken.
All right.
Very nice. All right, pop it open, take a taste. Everyone at home, do the same. You know the drill. Whether you're on the toilet or out in the
Sláinte.
backyard in front of the campfire, take a slug.
If you're
So-
Tofino, we're sorry.
Yeah,
Delightful.
for now, that'll probably come back up.
Actually,
next time.
Greg, have you ever heard the song by a Canadian band called the Planet Smashers called Surfing in Tofino?
I have actually. I know the Planet
Ah.
Smashers. I think I saw them live one time, and it might have been with the Flatliners, but I'm not entirely sure. But I do like the Planet Smashers. They're a great band.
Nice.
Nice.
Your Canadian indie cred is like rising in my opinion.
rising.
I mean,
Yeah.
I also lived in Saskatoon for over 2 years. So
Holy fuck.
Yeah, so
you may be more Canadian than I am.
Maybe I am, because it was I did grad school at the University of Saskatchewan.
Oh, nice.
So,
Oh, wow.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
That's great.
Nice. I'm sure you go to St. Catharines all the time.
I do, because it's 10 minutes away. It's 10 minutes for me.
Jordan, let's just leave, man. These guys are just gonna.
I know they're gonna have a love fest. We'll just leave this turned on and
go Canada
See you in
crazy
an
in
hour.
here.
go Canada crazy. Oh, we love it,
Well-
Matthew. It's usually 2 Americans against 1 Canadian, so it's nice to balance out the energy here a bit.
I'm
So-
at least I'm at least 75% American, but fortunately I've been able to go around the world a little bit, so it's been kind of an enlightening experience, and I kind of feel a little more worldly than my St. Louis, Missouri suburban roots.
Nice.
Well, now that you've revealed that you've spent some time in Saskatchewan, then that might explain why you know a prairie band from Portage la Prairie, Manitoba.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Unraveling the Soden here.
I'm a super fan. I'm a super
I don't
fan.
know shit about Dick.
Something happened to me when I was a kid that just made me obsessed with this one band from Portage la Prairie, Manitoba, and it's just never been the same ever since. You know what I mean?
Wow.
Nice.
Fantastic. Well, we feel the same about No Means No, I guess.
Exactly. Well, and clearly, right? We
Exactly.
were all motivated to start fan casts, which I think we'll talk about a little bit later, right? Because I definitely
Sure.
want to dive into that. But let's go back to the beginning.
Right.
One of the things we like to talk to people that we interview, or we've been asking listeners to send in to us. I know for myself, I'm always fascinated in people's origin story for No Means No. How did you come across them? What did you first hear? What were your impressions? What's that story?
So in 1998, I was in a band in St. Louis, and I was the drummer for the band, and we found a guy who recorded local bands in his basement with like a 16-track board in his basement. He sort of like built a studio in his house, and he was super cheap for recording and engineering. It was like $18 an hour, which, when you're a kid in the 90s, that sounds like a ton, but when you think about actually recording music, that's a really great deal. So we went for it, and we just asked the guy questions, every day while we were in his house for the weekend. And we're like, oh, what's your favorite bands? Because he was like 26, which in our minds at that time was like ancient, because we were like 14 and 15. And he goes, oh, my favorite band is No Means No. And I had no idea who that was, but I remember it like it was yesterday when he said that. And because the very next day I went to the Vintage Vinyl, which is the record store just, that I would always go and buy all my punk CDs at. And I bought one. So I bought the No Means No record one. And maybe, no, it wasn't. I'm mistaking this already. So I knew about the band, but we're talking about the late 90s here. And I think one came out in 2000, didn't it?
Yep.
Okay. So a couple of years later, I was at the Vintage Vinyl, and I bought one, and I took it out to my car, and I put it in, and I was like, I absolutely hate this CD. I hated it so much. I was like, this is
high.
I was like, this is that guy's favorite band. And so I was infuriated because, buying a CD when you're 16 and having it not...
It's an investment. Yeah.
It is, man. And people talk about this on podcasts all the time, but when you spend $17 on something when you're 16, that's your CD for like the month. You know what I mean?
Right, yeah.
And so, Graveyard Shift comes on. Yeah, and like the Miles Davis cover, I did not understand it because I was like listening to Bad Religion and like No Effects and stuff like that. So the CD made
punk? What?
I was like,
What is this?
This made no sense to me. So I hated it, and I listened to it one time. Like, this really sucks. So I was really disappointed, and I was so mad. But I was also 16. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't really understand what was happening. I didn't have any conception of this band's history at that point.
No, that's a difficult entry point, I think, frankly.
Yeah.
One, it's not a great, it's an interesting entry point. Yeah.
Maybe
Fast forward. Very I can't even imagine a worse entry point for me personally, knowing my tastes in music. Like, I like rippers and bangers, you know what I mean? Like, I like metal, and I like Propagandhi and like Bad Religion and stuff like that. So it was really tough for me, and I gave up on it immediately. I didn't put any effort into it. I just went back to what I was listening to before, and I just let this CD languish on my shelf forever. So then fast forward 9 years, and I'm
this
living.
Is gonna get good.
I was like, I'm living in England. It is 2008, and I get a job teaching at a school in the UK. So the first day I'm there, this teacher walks in and he's like, "Hey, you like music?" And I'm like, "Yes."
Did you say it like that?
Yeah, he did. He did. He's like, "Hey, I'm John. You like music?" And I'm like, "Yeah." God. And so John and I like bonded immediately, and he was like telling me all the bands that he liked, and he was just like listing off bands like Shellac and the Mountain Goats and, you know, tons of other stuff, and like Atmosphere. And then he said No Means No was his favorite hardcore band of all time. I was like, dude, No Means No sucks.
Oh my God.
I was like, I don't know what you are
words.
talking about. Exactly. So he was enraged immediately.
My God.
Okay, and this isn't even really that long ago. So we're talking just 2021 right now. We're talking 2008. So No Means No had their entire career basically to this point. And I had heard one CD, and I'm just like dismissing them totally to this man who is, 10 years older than me, wants to be my friend, is trying to help me learn like my new job in life in the UK. And I just like totally slammed his favorite band right off the bat. And so he's like, dude.
No Means No sucks.
Yeah, he's like, dude, come over today. So I went over to his house after school, and we listened to the entire discography, like all the way through. And he started with Mama, and he went all the way through.
Holy shit, we got to get this guy on too.
Yeah, you really do. He's fabulous. He's actually the bass player of an incredible UK indie rock band called Lazarus Clamp, who are sort of like underground cult darlings in UK indie music. They've been a band since like 1993, and they have like 10 records out, and they've been playing shows for years and years. But my friend John is the bass player for them. And so he showed me the entire No Means No discography, and we were like drinking beer the whole time. And like, I think we stopped to like get like a curry takeout at one point. And at the end of it, he's like, so what do you think? And I'm like, well, this is clearly one of the best bands of all time, and I'm a total moron.
There you go.
He Clockwork Oranged your ass for sure.
Foie gras, whatever that duck is that you shove that stuff down. I mean, the foie gras.
Yeah. So he schooled me, and I needed it, because what I realized was just how special this band is, and how like incredible their body of work was, and how much of an idiot I was for being so dismissive. And then I thought back to that guy in the late 90s in St. Louis who said that No Means No was his favorite band. And I was like, I get it now. But when I first heard them, I was 16, and then I heard them again when I was like 27. And it just clicked in a totally new way. And that's my origin story for finding and becoming a massive fan of No Means No. These couple of pivotal experiences of dismissing them.
It took two people to.
And the reason and the reason I wound up with one as the record is because that was the only CD or vinyl that Vintage Vinyl had in stock at the time, because it was their brand new one. And I must have gotten it really close to the release date in 2000 as well, because that was about right when I got it.
Right,
wow,
yeah.
awesome! And the story makes total sense, because in the sense that No Means No fans, as I've often found, are real fanatics. So I can imagine that guy hearing you say that, he's like, nope, I'm on a fucking mission now. There's no way I'm going to let you get away with saying that. You're going to
come over to my house.
Ever done? Yeah, hold my beer. We're doing this.
Come over to my house.
This little fellow needs a No Means mentor.
Yeah, exactly.
And he had all of the original alternative press vinyl. He's got like 5,000 pieces of vinyl in his house. Like, we're talking about a serious music obsessive person. And he had all of the original pressings. So we just went one by one through the entire discography on vinyl in his living room. and it was just a transformative evening for me.
That's amazing.
I wonder what his strategy might have been if he was trying to get you into cardiacs instead.
I have no idea. But he became one of my best friends. I mean,
that's so great.
This is a person that I like respect and keep in touch with to this day, even though we live far apart. We're still friends.
Did you tell him what you're doing? Does he know you're on this thing?
No, he doesn't, but he knows. He listens to the podcast though, so he might actually hear this without even telling him.
Oh, that's good. Don't tell him. Let him.
Don't tell him, and then he'll hear.
Hi
you.
out there, and thank you very much for introducing Greg to.
I told him
to No Means No.
I told him about the podcast, so
nice.
it is because of me that he knows about this podcast.
Nice.
No shit.
That's excellent. That's excellent. Full circle.
That's
so now we have somebody from Lazarus Clamp coming on the podcast.
Yeah, right.
You really, I mean, he's fantastic, and he can tell you his version of events from the best of his recollection as well. And that would be.
I'd love to hear the other side of this story.
Yeah, I was planning on killing him.
Yeah.
I invited him over to my house.
I converted him. He's like, this kid says he likes punk rock and he hates No Means No. This is bullshit.
Yeah.
But he brought a 6-pack, so.
And he always had the best. He always had the best English ales too. We drank ESB like all the time. And he's just one of my best friends of all time, and I'm just grateful to him to this day. Otherwise, I still would have been dismissive of this band, who is one of the greatest bands ever, not just from Canada but from anywhere in the world.
Agreed.
Look at that.
Agreed. Right. So I mean that kind of dovetails in, and you've already kind of talked about this a little bit, but. What is it about No Means No that makes you say that, right? That makes you say that they're one of the greatest bands of all time. What do they mean to you in that sense? What's special about this?
This is like a job interview. This question.
It is.
Do you realize this?
I know.
That's
a
heavy-ass question.
And it's not always answerable. Frankly, it's not really answerable, but sometimes it is.
So to me, the really unique thing about this band is the fact that the rhythm section is the lead instrumentation for the band. This is something that is really rare within punk rock. And like if you think about another band like the Descendants, where the bass is always coming through really, really clearly, but that the guitar is also like super ripping all the time. Like the purposeful decision of this band to have the bass be like the out front lead instrument to me is really something that stands alone within the genre. Because you can think about a band like Primus or whatever, but really No Means No is like the pinnacle of doing the bass as the lead instrument within punk and hardcore. I mean, Shellac is really good about that as well, but like but Shellac doesn't have the energy and the drive that that No Means No tends to have. So No Means No is far more within my wheelhouse of a band that really just rages, but also has that bass as the lead instrument. So that's kind of like the sound aspect that brings me into it. And the fact that Rob as a vocalist is so special and unique among vocalists, because I came of age in an era in music when vocalists were like the early 2000s were like the height of like emo and stuff like that. So bands were trying to sing super high. All of the vocals were really soaring and really like AFI, Newfound Glory, bands like this. Everybody's trying to hit the very, very top of their vocal range all the time. And then you have this guy come in like Rob, and he's way down there. And it's just
like, fuck that.
It's such a stark contrast to a lot of the trends and the sounds that were being, sort of like bombarding me within popular music and pop punk and like emo in the early 2000s, and then to have this total contrast of being this band has the bass as the lead instrument, and this singer's voice is so deep that you won't hear anything else like this within the genre. So that to me are like a couple of the things that really stand out to me about. So
you're a bass guy and not a treble guy.
Yeah, I mean, kinda. Like I grew up as a drummer, so like I have like a special relationship with bass because, if you have a good rhythm section, like I would always be looking at the bass player in the band that I was playing with, because he and I were always like trying to like keep my kick drum and his bass strumming patterns aligned.
Symbiotic
so like
crap.
Yeah. So like I think, and then I also think about a band like Hot Water Music, where the bass and the drums are super like speaking to each other in a way. So that's kind of like the way that No Means No kind of clicks with me as a listener as well. It's very the beat.
Well,
nice.
Welcome, Gregory. Welcome.
Thank you.
So what do you think of John? I mean, you've been talking about Rob a lot, but what do you think about John? Did you ever like hone on him and just like, I'm not worthy kind of shit?
Oh, he's ridiculous. Like unbelievable. His drumming is so special that the 3 times that I was able to see No Means No live, I was blown away by the fact that John's drum set was set up right at the edge of the stage.
Right.
Because I would just go and stand against the stage.
Yeah, you would.
In front of John. And so
that's my spot.
I've been 3 feet from John Wright 3 times, and I was fortunate enough to have those 3 times before they called it a day. But I was very, very late to this band, like embarrassingly late. But I'm willing to own that shame. You know what I mean?
There's no shame. You came around
shame.
now.
I did.
Come on now.
I did. I needed to hit a certain age, though, before I could appreciate what this band was doing. I wasn't ready for it when it first hit me, and I came in at the wrong entry point. But I love John's drumming. I think he's unbelievable, and he's a standout player. I mean, just you really can't get much better.
You're no means known again.
Yeah.
Oh my God, Matthew.
So yeah, we got our resident dad joke. So do you, you've said you've gotten to see him a couple of times. Do you have any No Means No stories or any gigs that you particularly remember that you'd want to opine about?
Yeah, absolutely. So my friend John that showed me all of No Means No,
right.
He was always keeping a lookout for gigs in London, and then he would say, we're going to see this festival called All Tomorrow's Parties, and then he would be like, oh, we're going to go see that Mastodon show where they're going to play Crack the Sky in their entirety. Like, he would drag me to all these shows because he had the car, and I was just this guy living in London, like as like this, this person living abroad. But he's like, oh, hey, No Means No is coming in July, and I already bought tickets, so we're going.
Oh my God.
Nice.
What a pal.
Yeah, that's a good friend.
I was like, oh my God. So we go to the show, and it was on July 26th, 2009 at Dingwalls, which is a tiny little club in London. And so they come out, and there was an opener. I don't really remember much about it, but the opener. But the band comes out, and they opened up with Old. And it was really awesome. And John had never heard it before because it was on the tour EPs that weren't quite out yet. And so he was like, whoa, a new song. And he was like, oh, it sounds like that record that you hate. He's like, this could have been on one. And then
you hate.
And then he just grilled me about it, which was all in good fun. But, then they go into Valley of the Damned, and it just the set takes off from there. And so 2/3 of the way through the show, Tom has an asthma attack. The room,
I think I remember hearing about this.
Yeah, so the room was
totally smoky and stuff, really hot.
It was insanely hot. It was late July, and it was obscenely hot, very unseasonably hot for London. There's no central air in the building. And so 2/3 of the way through the show, Tom has like an asthma attack, and he starts apologizing into the microphone. He's like, I gotta get out of here. I gotta get out of here. So Tom basically runs out of the club.
Holy shit.
And Rob and John look at each other, and then they break into Kill Everyone Now as a duo.
It's so great.
It was
boner time is what it was.
It is arguably my favorite live performance that I've ever seen.
Wow.
Is them playing Kill Everyone Now as a 2-piece, because Rob turned his bass up, and like it was punishing. I mean, it was like it kind of felt like my internal organs were vibrating, like a Dinosaur Jr. show or like a Motorhead show, where it just hurts. Like everything inside you is shaking around. And that's what it was like. And so I got to see them play Kill Everyone Now and several other songs, but Kill Everyone Now is obviously the one that stands out so much. And so that was my one of my big stories.
Wow,
is
that's great.
Piece too.
And
That's
then
fucking great.
Tom came back later. He tried to start playing again, sitting down in a chair, and he's like, "Nope, gotta go." So then Tom left again.
Oh, poor thing. Yeah, I remember hearing about that.
Yeah.
Weren't people smoking in there too?
I can't remember if it was smoke or if it was just obscenely hot, because the heat the heat is what I remember the most. And they had these really bright red lights on the stage, so the band was just like cloaked in red light. And so I think that it was just a mixture of like the late July unseasonably hot weather and then these like these grueling red stage lights. And Tom he just kind of fell apart, and everybody felt bad for him. Like nobody was mad or anything.
Of course.
No, of course not.
We were worried about him. We're like, oh my God, is he okay? And so that was kind of like a special standout moment, and like the history of No Means No that I actually got to be a part of, is seeing that happen. Yeah,
that's great.
Wow.
Fantastic. Fantastic shit.
Wow.
So we've heard from you like what your entry point with One. I mean, I love One, but yeah, what a weird fucking entry point. But
Seriously.
now that you've had a lot more time, 10 years, something like that, to bake on them, do you have a favorite album, or dare I even say a favorite song? Like, is there one you're pulling for, reaching, if not the very end, like at least towards the final round of the podcast?
My favorite.
Have we already killed it?
Yeah.
my favorite is Why Do They Call Me Mr. Happy? And my favorite two songs that are on there, Kill Everyone Now and The River. And so I'm really obsessed with The River because once again, back in my friend John's living room in Aldershot, United Kingdom, he one night put on the live DVD, Would We Be Live?
Oh yeah, that's great.
And the performance in that of The River was so captivating that like I watched it over and over and over again, just that one song, like several times in a row. And I was just so captivated by it. So seeing that DVD was a really huge thing for me. And then that song has just kind of stuck with me forever. I also really like the Generic Shame EP, Sex's Philosophy. That song is so good. I can hardly stand it. I just love that song so much. The groove is so just like powerful to me. And let's see, the first one, and then I also really love the energy of All Roads Lead to Ausfahrt. I think that's a pretty special record too. So
wow, look at you.
Those are kind of my go-tos whenever I'm really in the mood for some. But whenever I want to get really weird with it, I put on the Jello Biafra. I have a copy of Sky Is Falling and I Want My Mommy on vinyl, and it's one of my favorite records to put on whenever I just want to rage clean my house. Yeah,
there you go.
So we did kill one of your favorites right off the bat.
We just tossed it right out the window.
But here's the thing. Like, I love the format of your show. Like, I know that a lot of people might be really worried about you guys like killing off songs or whatever, but I think that it's hilarious.
It's just all of our opinions, really. I mean, anybody
it doesn't
could
fucking mean
get
anything, right?
A bunch of their friends and just, jerk each other off and drink a few beers and be like, I like it this way, or whatever.
Exactly.
It's just all opinion based. We're just having fun, really.
Exactly. Like, I make up my ratings. I like on our podcast, we rate the song at the end, and like I literally just make it up on the fly. The other day we did an episode where I think I ranked a song a 1.77 out of 5, and I just like pulled that number out of nowhere. So I totally understand what you mean, but I love your format about like killing off songs. I think it's very No Means No, because it has almost like that violent undertone, like that darkness of like killing something off, that it really just works with the tone and the atmosphere of this band. You know what I mean?
Man.
Kill every song now, right? I mean,
kill every song
right
now.
There, right?
That's that's the alternative title for the podcast. Kill every song now.
Yeah. It'll certainly be the episode title when that one comes through. Now that
I shouldn't have said that jerking off stuff. That doesn't happen. Actually, there's no jerking off.
No, absolutely not. Never.
Nope.
Well, you can only see me from the shoulders up, though.
I would just like for everybody to know that all three members of this podcast can see my hands in the video
Right.
screen right now.
At all times.
And you can't see any of ours.
Nope, by design.
Oh, shit.
You know, it's really interesting. You're talking about your. When we talked to the Invasives, and they also kind of came to No Means No in the latter period, right? Through touring and closer, they're really close to the band.
Which
but it's really
surprised me.
interesting how, yeah,
Well, they're younger though. That's
exactly,
why
and it's
just
interesting
younger guys.
how
No, they're
there's
not,
kind of
though.
this.
Not that much
Well,
younger.
They're like 10 years younger than we are. They're kids. They're little babies.
I'm younger than you.
In any event, they I've lost my train of thought. No, I got it back.
Sorry.
So no. So we do this to each other all the time. It's right in line. There's often this kind of false dichotomy. It's real for some, and some not, like the pre-Andy era, post-Andy era, right? And you've got Kill Everyone Now right in the middle. But it's interesting. I think a lot of people who came to the band later, maybe because the songs were newer, that was where the energy was. They got to see the band live then, and so those are the songs they got to see. Have a real fondness for these later albums that I won't say they get dismissed by older fans, but sometimes they're like, oh yeah, that one's okay, but I haven't listened to it as much, like Ausfahrt or something like that, right? They get really attached to it. So it's great. I always appreciate when we talk to people or we hear from people who really have an appreciation for that later stuff, for those later albums.
Absolutely, yeah.
You know, like the tour EPs, you know, even Michelle on some of these. And I mean, all of us, but going like, oh yeah, I haven't really listened to that one this much.
Nope.
Like,
I have both tour EPs on vinyl. I own them.
Nice. Yeah.
And I always look at Discogs to see what all these things are selling for, and I was like, I have like $700 worth of No Means No vinyl. Go me.
Yeah, you do, and just hang on to it.
Hang on to it. Although we are blessed that AT is going to release a lot of this stuff. I'm hoping they get to release all of it and not just what was on their original catalog.
Soon,
but yeah, I hope so.
It's the year-long vinyl backlog for pressing that's like roiling record labels right now, so that no one can get their stock in because things are delayed a year. Another one that I didn't even mention is Worldhood of the World, man. The song Humans. Jeez. I just like that record is so underrated. So I'm a big fan of Worldhood as well. I just like Tom Holliston a whole lot. So like I really love those records, and like, you know, the recording quality changes and develops over the years as well. So like I'm a 90s kid. So like that the sound of those 90s album productions sounds so much different than 80s album productions. So like that's one of my things is like I get into a certain kind of like engineering production side as well, where like my ear just gravitates towards certain kinds of recordings. So that's just kind of my draw to some of the later records as well. Is it's kind of like just the way my ear was trained to appreciate punk rock, discovering punk in the 90s.
Interesting.
Can I tell you something? I know a big secret. I know a recording engineer that recorded a bunch of what was that band you said you liked, Greg? The Religion, Bad Religion.
Yeah,
he recorded Bad Religion and Anthrax, and he told me that those 90s and late 80s tapes, they sound a little bit different. They're nicknamed Coke tapes.
Oh yeah,
a lot of people were doing Coke. No, he said this, and I believe him because he's the shit.
Believe it too.
A lot of people were doing Coke, and it changed their hearing so that you get a lot of high end.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense.
Yep,
Interesting.
Yep.
Interesting.
Coke takes or
Coke takes.
Yep.
Whereas so much early No Means No sounds like it's recorded in a toilet tank.
Hey now.
It's a toilet tank.
Oh, it's a conscious choice, but it also because it probably wasn't very far away from the toilet, and the
right.
insulation was not very good. Just having been to some of these places myself.
Yeah, exactly.
So
your ears get a little weird when you're under the influence.
Yeah, exactly.
And in the
so
basement.
I want to hear and give you an opportunity to tell the No Means No listeners here, No Means Nothing podcast listeners, who may not know about your podcast, or some who may already be fans of Propagandhi, or those who aren't. Tell us a bit about your podcast and give us your kind of elevator pitch for Propagandhi, and what about them has attracted you so deeply to dive in and make a fan cast.
Sure. I mean, so really quick, like I appreciate what you all do here so much, because like the format that you all have approached here for No Means No Thing, for the bracket style of elimination over time, is really fabulous and really interesting to me as somebody who makes a sort of similar style of podcast where like we talk about every single song. So I really like what you all do here because it's really unique in the song by song band podcast that I've heard. And people reach out to me because the Propagandhi Podcast is fortunately pretty well known at this point. And they're like, we want to do a podcast about this band, but I don't know if we could do it like you do it. And then what I say is, okay, go listen to No Means No Thing. Where I do, this is serious. Like I really do this. And I'll tell them, listen to the No Means No Thing podcast because they do a bracket style. Then go listen to the Last Believer Good Riddance podcast because they talk about 3 songs per episode, but they don't eliminate anything. They just talk about them. Then go listen to the Alkaline Trios podcast, As You Were, because they talk about 1 song per episode, but they don't go into tons and tons of depth. And then go listen to mine because we talk about 1 song per episode and we go into excruciating depth. So between these 4 podcasts that I just listed, we have 4 different styles of how to approach a band's catalog and discography. So Propagandhi is my favorite band of all time. They currently are based in Winnipeg, Manitoba, but as Matthew mentioned earlier, they were, their genesis is within Portage la Prairie, Manitoba, outside of Winnipeg. And they are a band who taught me a lot about the world and how to be curious and how to care about other people and how to care about ideas. So like from Propagandhi, I would learn about things like veganism and vegetarianism, pro-feminism, how to be, gay positive, how to be animal friendly, anti-fascist, things like that, and how to learn about history from a critical lens and how to explore the world and to get all different sides of stories instead of the narrow narratives that are fed to us as young children about how the world is. So Propagandhi is one of these bands that taught me how to think and how to explore ideas. And so that is what the band has done for me. And listeners out there will definitely know who they are. Their records are How to Clean Everything, Less Talk, More Rock, Today's Empires, Tomorrow's Ashes, Potemkin City Limits, Supporting Cast, Failed States, and Victory Lap. So they only have 7 LPs. And so it's a very small discography. But within these songs, you have tons and tons of ideas, like historical events about genocide and cops killing people, First Nations land rights issues, and things like that. So we do a song by song podcast, and on every episode, we talk about a different song. And on every episode, we have a guest who comes on to talk about that song in particular. And then we do a deep dive into the lyrical content, the ideas presented therein. We talk about the musical breakdown and the song structure. And sometimes our episodes have been longer than 3 hours.
Holy shit.
It's absurd. And as you can tell, we're already 45 minutes into this thing here tonight, and I could just talk about this kind of stuff forever. So I research intensely. If the song talks about the Oka crisis and Kanasatake standoff and resistance in Oka, Quebec, I'm going to be researching that entire event and going to be presenting it in as thorough detail as I possibly can to the listeners who may not know anything about this extremely important Indigenous land rights resistance that took place in Quebec in 1990. So
that's amazing.
I go really, really hard on the research aspect of it. And so, because that's what Propagandhi inspires within me.
Right. You
know what I mean?
Right.
So they're the kind of band, and Propagandhi are massive No Means No fans. You can find tons of online videos of the guitar player Beeve from Propagandhi wearing a No Means No with the wrong logo on the front of it, t-shirt playing live. You can find pictures of their bassist Todd wearing No Means No shirts as well. They worship at the altar of No Means No. And they know just how amazing this band is. So No Means No is Propagandhi's one of their idols in general. And that's kind of where the 2 stories overlap, is because this band that I love so much loves the band that you all talk about so much. And so it's a really cyclical thing for me.
Mm-hmm.
And these are 2 giants of Canadian punk and hardcore at this point.
Yeah,
so
yeah, for sure.
It's really important, and they overlap very seamlessly. And so I love the way that you all do your show. and then I do my show in a certain way. And like I tell people about your show a lot, especially if they're trying to start a discography podcast, which is such an overwhelming project. And Jordan, I remember texting with you ages ago when yours was getting off to the ground. I was like,
it was great.
Here are my ideas, blah, 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 blah. Here's what I learned.
Greg, that was great. Just to get a little meta, that was fantastic. Like right as we were starting up, getting all those like supportive texts from you and messages, that really gave me a lot of fuel. Like, fuck, this is great. Like there's some passionate people out there who love the band.
I was obsessed. Great. I was like, here's what I learned the hard way. Here's what you can think about. Let me know if you ever have any questions.
Some people don't share that stuff. You're cool.
No, he was was sharing all sorts of fucking information. It was fantastic.
Yeah,
thank you.
It really meant a lot.
Jeez.
Yeah.
No, I'm really impressed. I mean, people Canadians don't know a lot about Canadian history, and I really like the fact that you would dig into all that stuff. And I'm quite interested that an American would be. I mean, you spent some time in Canada, so maybe that's sort of how you came across Propagandhi and everything like that. But just the fact that, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but in Canada, we have a little bit more tolerance for socialism, and people like Propagandhi would be probably castigated or overlooked because as loonies or dangerous communists or something like that. And so, have you found that it's a different sort of experience, kind of explaining them to, because they're just intelligent, socially conscious people. And have you ever encountered any obstacles kind of selling them to people, I guess?
I mean, so as you all know, with a niche show like this, people who are not obsessive about the band are very turned off by our podcast because it's so long. Right. So oftentimes I don't know if we're really reaching those people because but Propagandhi themselves are openly critical, almost to the point of hostility in the past, of critiquing the people who would show up at the shows who weren't interested in what the band was saying within the lyrics, but just wanted to mosh. So like that's been an issue that they have bumped up against for their entire career as a band. And so, with the podcast, like I'd like to think that maybe I'm, helping some people out. And people have been very kind in their commentary about telling me like, oh my gosh, it totally made me rethink this event and that event. And thank you so much. So we are receiving feedback like that, where people are saying that, wow, I've never thought about it that way, which is the number one compliment that I could ever receive, is that I'm helping people see why the band may have been so inspired by an event to write a song about it. And then they're like, this song's been out for 25 years. I can't believe I've never really put any more effort into thinking about it than this, when I've been singing along in my car for all these years. And you guys said it in like a way that like made sense to me. Thank you so much. And I'm just like, man, that's so kind of you to even spend time messaging me and telling me.
And vivisecting and
it's great praise.
You're opening it up.
Song exploding.
Yeah, it's a compulsive obsession for sure. It is a compulsion. Like I can't stop doing it, and like I've made many sacrifices in my personal life over the last year and change doing this show when I could have been doing many, many other things. But like it's like a compulsion that is like just like I have to do it, or I won't be as happy as a person. So it's just something that really makes me happy right now.
Nice.
Hey, good for you.
I love that you mentioned the Oka Crisis specifically, because I can't remember whether it's one of the albums that John Wright played on, but DOA's album Loggerheads, the album cover is a very, very famous image of a young Mohawk fellow.
Is it the face-to-face one?
Yeah.
Is it the soldier and the warrior face-to-face?
That's right.
Yeah, that's one of the most iconic images in Canadian history at this point, I think.
Yeah, indeed.
To me, it is at least.
But anyway, I'm not sure whether John Wright was playing with them at that time, but he did play on a couple of DOA albums. So
nice.
There's that overlap right there.
I'm going to have to dig into that too, because I love DOA.
So I know one of the things that's been really kind of befuddling and horrifying and amazing for us is that, we get to hear from Andy once in a while about the background on the songs, which is
cool.
A great thing. Have you gotten to speak with any of the members of Propagandhi? Are you in contact with them at all? What's the relationship there?
Yes, I am. They're extremely supportive of the podcast. They know all about it. They've known about it since day one, and all of them have appeared on the podcast as guests. Except for John K. Sampson, who went on to sing in the Weaker Thans. He declined, which is totally fine. That's totally his right to do. He's like, I've said everything I need to say about Propagandhi at this point in my life. I'm moving on to other things. Good luck, which is great. And so I went and got the singer of John K. Sampson's high school band to be on the podcast instead. So that was fun.
That's great.
Great.
Yeah. So
that's funny.
Yeah. So Chris Hanna, the singer from Propagandhi, has been on the podcast 2 times. He was on episode 6 and episode 60. We had
the most recent one.
Yeah. We had the bassist Todd Kowalski on for episode number 26. We had Sue Lynn Hago, their second guitar player, has been on the show, I think, 4 times now. Their other second guitar player who was in the band from 2006 to about 2014, David Gillis. He's been on the podcast now another 4 times. And then George Samoleski, the drummer from Propagandhi, was on episode number 51. And
Jesus Christ, listen to you.
And he was on I interviewed him for like 90 minutes. So, I mean, I have had sustained direct contact with this band so many times now, and it's like just a thrill every single time.
That's great.
How do you not sound like Chris Farley? I mean, do you ever catch yourself like
just freaking out,
trying not to geek out and be like, hey,
well, I mean, so
hey,
at this point,
I like your band.
Yeah, and
a lot.
At this point, no, fortunately. And I've been interviewing people for a long time because I had another podcast. I have another podcast, which is an academic show where I interview professors about their books. So I've had Pulitzer Prize winners on that show. I've had celebrity chefs on that show. Like I've had some like super awesome people on that show. So I had hundreds of hours of interviewing experience under my belt with some exceptionally famous people.
Oh, okay. So you can go kind of compartmentalize.
Totally.
It
and to me, all these people are just people and they have life stories to share. And I see my role as capturing those stories and putting them down on tape for whoever wishes to consume them. So like, I almost just see it as like almost like an oral history project. And like, fortunately, I'm really not afraid to talk to anybody. And I really like people and I really love life stories in general. So that's kind of like why I was able to. I did have the first time I interviewed Chris Hanna, I was freaking out a little bit, and you can hear it in my voice in the first like 3 or 4 minutes. But then I settled down and I was like, oh, he's a guy with life stories.
Yeah, he puts his pants on the same way you do.
Exactly. Exactly. And I just love his art. And I love artists and I love creativity and I love making stuff. And this is just kind of like my way of putting creativity into the world, because I'm not going to record songs and I'm not going to write novels and I'm not going to, like do things like that. So this is like the thing that helps me stay creative, keep my brain ticking. And I've just been fortunate enough that the band thinks that we're doing an okay job and they keep coming back on the show.
Nice.
Oh, wicked.
That's great,
cool.
man. That's great. Well, I mean, huge congratulations on it.
Tell me about Andy though. Like, oh my gosh.
Well, so I mean, as listeners will know, we now at the end of every episode have this segment called Andy's Corrections, where he's been listening to the pod and then sending us in notes about the songs that he was involved in, right? So about kind of behind the scenes views and tidbits that are just absolutely golden. Some of the best stuff. And we all of us in one way or another knew Andy a little bit before the podcast. He's just one of the nicest people I've ever had the pleasure of meeting in my life.
Approachable guy.
So it's been a genuine thrill to have him listening to the podcast and then helping to contribute a bit has been fantastic. Absolutely.
I love his Instagram as well, because he always posts those street scenes in like Amsterdam, and I'm like, oh my God, this dude is like,
makes you want to go there really bad, doesn't
this
it?
dude's living his peak life right now. He's doing awesome.
Yeah, it's a beautiful place. Jesus.
Yep, I know.
Well,
can't imagine.
Matthew, Michelle, you have any other questions for Greg before we wrap this up?
I got to go back and listen to the Ska Sucks episode.
We did two episodes on Ska Sucks. So make sure you listen to the second one. It's called the Ska Sucks bonus episode extravaganza, because I interviewed the band from Winnipeg called Whole Lotta Milka, who was a ska band. I interviewed Whole Lotta Milka because they wrote the rebuttal to Ska Sucks, and they put out the rebuttal to that song as a ska song. And so I had them on the podcast to talk about their rebuttal song to Chris Hanna in the late 90s.
That's funny.
Whole Lotta Milka, of course, is a Kids in the Hall reference. So.
Yeah. And they were great. I had Jeff and Greg from Whole Lotta Milk on the podcast, and it was just a ton of fun tracking down these guys who put out a record like 23 years ago that critiqued Chris Hanna from Propagandhi. I mean, it's just too funny if you think about it. Like, they're like, you want us to be on your podcast? This happened like 23 years ago. So I just love stuff like that.
Awesome.
That's so great.
Hi, I was wondering, how many times have you been to Winnipeg?
0 yet. However, I have a ticket to Propagandhi's October 9th, 2021 show at the Park Theater in Winnipeg, 1 month from tomorrow. So
very one of the very tiny little section of time where Winnipeg's actually kind of pleasant.
I might be, and I don't think anything is for real until it's happening in front of me.
Of course, at
this point in the world, but like in theory, I will be in Winnipeg in about a month, seeing Propagandhi on their home turf. So we'll see how it goes.
Lovely.
Fantastic.
Well,
good for you.
In my opinion, of Winnipeg, I actually love Winnipeg. It's not a beautiful place, but it's got a lot of heart, and I think because it's so far away from most Canadian places, that the talent kind of doesn't drain away to other places as fast. And so Whole Lotta Milka and Propagandhi, like they probably wouldn't have been. I didn't listen to the podcast, but I probably wouldn't have been fully Bad Blood. There weren't a lot of turf wars or anything like that. People just it's fucking cold. There's a artist named Venetian Snares. His album it's called Winnipeg is a Frozen Shithole. It's true.
I know about this one.
But people just sort of holed up in their basements without a lot to do outside, and smoke cigarettes, drink beers, and make music, and they're probably still doing that. And we thank you guys, you Winnipeggers, for it, because I think it's one of the most Canadian places. Heartbeat of the country.
I've had so many guests from Winnipeg on the podcast as well, because people in Winnipeg are very protective of Propagandhi because it's such a special band from that town, and so a lot of people maybe were a little skeptical that we were doing this show, and like we had to like kind of earn some respect over time, I think. But everybody from Winnipeg that's reached out to us has been so cool. And Winnipeg Free Press even put us on the cover of their Arts and Life section.
Wow.
Like the Winnipeg.
That's amazing.
The main newspaper put my co-host and I, like they did an interview with us, and they wrote an article about the podcast that they put in the newspaper.
That's great.
So,
fantastic.
Like Winnipeg has been so cool to my co-host and I, because they freaking put us in the newspaper. And
that's great.
The band didn't know the article was happening in the newspaper, and until Jord's mom, so Jord, the drummer from Propagandhi, his mom texted him and Chris. She said, "Did you know that you all are on the front cover of the Arts and Life section?" And they went down to the store. They got the newspaper and they opened it up, and like these two dinguses from the U.S. are like, their pictures are like right next to mine, and so they're like, "Oh my God, this is crazy." So Winnipeg has been like so cool to us, so cool. So like it would thrill me. Nothing would thrill me more than to be able to have this trip actually happen. If the world,
I hope it does.
I know.
Yeah, me too, man. Me too.
So it's been really cool. It's been really cool.
Our borders are open to fully vaccinated travelers now, so hopefully
I am. Yes, I am.
Excellent.
And that's and I got to do the PCR test. And just make sure. My plan is to drive to Toronto from Buffalo and fly from Toronto. So do a land crossing at the Lewiston Queenston Bridge in Niagara County into Southern Ontario. Drive up and park at Toronto Airport, and then take a direct from Toronto to Winnipeg, because it's only like an hour and a half flight. And if I fly from Buffalo, I'll have 3 layovers and it'll take me 14 hours to get there.
Blah.
So it's like
holy crap.
It's absurd.
That's out.
Because you have two small market airports like Buffalo and Winnipeg, and then it's a disaster of connections.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Understandable.
Yeah.
Sounds like
Toronto's
you're doing
a big
the right
place.
thing.
Yeah.
Well, Greg, we are thrilled that you came on the pod. Thank you. You've been an amazing listener interview. This has been fucking great.
Thank you.
And I hope that everybody goes and checks out your podcast. I know it's available on all the places, as far as I can tell, right? Like, you go find a podcast, whatever you're listening to this podcast in. Unscripted Moments is going to be right there. So find it, dig into it, start at the beginning, listen to that shit, because it's really fucking good.
And if you haven't heard Propagandhi, if you haven't heard Propagandhi, then look them up too. I actually I don't know much of their latter-day stuff at all, and I'm going to go and dig into that myself. So,
and it's certainly far more accessible, easier to find than No Means No. So you shouldn't have a problem finding it.
Yeah, and if you think they suck the first time you hear them,
find someone to sit you down to listen to the whole fucking
shove them down your
catalog.
throat. Say, what the fuck are you thinking, mate?
Exactly.
I love that. That ties us all the way back to my first story. It's so good.
Exactly.
I love it, Michelle.
Which Propagandhi album would be the one that might turn off a young listener?
that would turn someone off?
Yeah, what's their one?
Like you were turned off by one.
So I think,
are you going to get in trouble? He's going to get in trouble. Come on.
So here's the thing. So I think that if somebody were to hear, there's 2 records that I don't think somebody should start with. I do not think somebody should start with Potemkin City Limits, and I do not think somebody should start with Failed States. But I think that if you listen to any other one first, you will be okay. Actually, I take that back. I'm going to add one more to the don't start with list, and that was probably Today's Empires, Tomorrow's Ashes. I think that if you're going to start, you should start with their classic debut, How to Clean Everything, which is my least favorite Propagandhi record, which gets me in big trouble.
Look at you.
Listen to How to Clean Everything, Less Talk, More Rock, Supporting Cast, and Victory Lap. So those are the 4 that I think that people could start with as a really good entry point. But if you start with the newest record, Victory Lap, you're going to get a really wide range of their metal influenced years and their very like 90s skate punky years in a perfect package that mixes together all 30 years of their sound into a record. So their newest record is extremely accessible for new listeners, and it mixes all 30 years of their career into a really, really nicely rounded sound.
That's great. That's great.
Excellent.
I'm absolutely envious that your favorite band of all time still exists and that you get to go see them play.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that is not something fingers crossed, not something we get to say. But man, it's been fantastic to have you on the podcast. And thank you for agreeing to this. And again, thank you for reaching out so early in our podcast and being a booster, man. That was real great.
You
really
know what?
Appreciate it.
My philosophy on podcasts for niche things like this is this. We all do better when we all do better.
Exactly. Here.
Nice.
Yeah.
And on that note, thank you everybody for listening. And this will be dropping on an off week, I'm sure. So we will catch you next time when we take on 4 more songs. But thanks everybody. And thanks again to Greg for showing up.
Thank you, Greg.
Thanks everybody.